Hello and a very warm welcome to Cultural Communication Confidence with me, Victoria Reynoldson. And a very warm welcome to this episode 55, where we're talking about building communication bridges in conflict. Now, no matter how well you get along with your team, your customers, your partners, conflict is bound to happen at some point. And clearly, conflict is not positive. Short term, it can lead to challenges with collaboration, actually stopping projects moving forward. But clearly, it has impacts in terms of the whole team if it's internal. So this can affect team spirit and relationships. And it can also have really poor impacts in terms of trust and how people feel about each other. Now, conflict can happen, and what we really are focusing on today is what happens after the conflict. What can you take responsibility for to help move through the conflict and find a way through, a solution? The way I want you to think about it is like a bridge, where you're building a bridge from one side and trying to find a way to meet the other person somewhere in between. Now, that might be in the middle, but that might be more on their side or more on your side. The important point about this is that you're the person taking responsibility to start building this bridge. So what do you need to make the bridge? So to start off with, I want you to think about the role of your own nonverbal communication. What I mean by this is, what is happening with your body language, your facial expressions, your hand gestures? Sometimes if we enter into a conversation where there is conflict, we don't realize how much of that is being expressed through our non-verbal communication. So we actually have to really pay attention to and make the effort to relax and have open body language, to really show and demonstrate perhaps curiosity and the fact that we're willing to work with the other person through the way that we're sitting or standing in relationship to them. So it starts with our non-verbal communication. Then we need to make sure that our empathy radar is switched on and really tuned up. And what I mean by this is that we're really turning on the empathy. Of course, we may have our very strong views about what is the right thing to do, about why perhaps the other person isn't in the right place with what they're thinking or doing. But I would encourage you to really take that moment to pause, to turn on the empathy and try and work out what could be going on here. What might be driving the situation, their behaviours, the way that they're communicating with you. This is something that we use quite a lot in cultural intelligence. And if you haven't listened to my previous episodes on cultural intelligence, I'll put some links in the show notes. But this particular idea of having empathy and curiosity about the other person is all about one of the cultural intelligence capabilities called CQ Drive. So having the motivation to understand the other person and where they're coming from. Part of this is exploring their objections. So really properly taking the time to fully understand what they mean. Too often in these situations, we jump with the emotions that are running with it. We jump to conclusions. We assume we understand the other person, but in fact, we haven't fully listened, or perhaps they haven't fully expressed exactly what's going on for them. In these situations, it can be very helpful to understand by clarifying, checking in and using good quality questions and reflection techniques to make sure that you have fully got the big picture, the understood what's happening. So that could be questions like, or statements like, tell me more about, or can I check I've understood, or can I clarify your position on this area? So use it to explore probe, and get into the details of what's going on. Once you have that picture, once you understand their point of view, you've built the empathy, then we need to come to a point of view together where you identify what the common goal is. Now, that's an interesting one because in some situations, particularly with people, perhaps you're working, they're external to your organization, maybe they're customers or partners, or different organizations you're trying to do a collaboration with. You might have two very different objectives or goals that you're trying to get to. So in this situation, I encourage you to ladder up. Can you find a broad goal that works for both of you and a reason why that you're collaborating together? I think this is quite important to establish. If you're working as two separate parties with two separate goals, it may be really difficult to move through that conflict. But if you can come together and brainstorm and talk about it and identify what it is that the two of you or the two groups together are trying to achieve, then you're much more likely to find the way through. So identify that goal. From there, you can then bring an innovation mindset, because this is where now you can really start saying, well, I heard your idea about this and I wonder whether we could build on it by. So building ideas is the name of the game. What we want to avoid is saying, no, but that won't work. No, but I don't think that's the right way to go. What we want to try and see if there's any merit in any of the ideas that they're suggesting or in the approaches that they think are the right way to go. You want to explore and see, is there anything you can use as a base point, but then add your own ideas onto? What we want to do is help others to feel acknowledged, heard, and that you're building on the ideas rather than trying to take them down and present your own view. So use this innovation mindset for building. Think yes and rather than no but. And maybe also this idea of that it doesn't have to be one option or another. Maybe there is a combined approach or a third way, which would be even stronger. Once you have that, then you come to the final stage, which is about one small step forward. Too often in conflict, what I see my clients talking about or teams talking about is that they're trying to fully convince somebody else or another group of people to buy into their way and fully buy into it all the way through to implementation. That might be too big an ask straight away. So rather than that, frame the last part of the bridge as a way to experiment, explore and test. What is one small step that you could both agree to that would take you forward along the bridge? Now that might be to do a survey or a poll with a group of people to get feedback about what is the best way. It might be about doing an experiment or a limited trial of something just to get some feedback and understand what works and what doesn't and maybe adjust the plan. So think about it in that way. You're not trying to fully convince and persuade somebody to fully implement the plan. It's more about that one small step. What is one thing that they might agree to that takes you forward along the bridge? So those are the steps. Those are the ideas to help you with this idea of moving through conflict. It starts with us and us understanding how we're coming across with our nonverbal communication. And it absolutely moves through helping us to understand others, build the empathy, understand our common goal, and then really experimenting with how we can build on each other's ideas and test those ideas in reality. I really hope that this has been useful to you, and the idea of the communication bridge is something that you can apply to many different situations, whether that is a mild disagreement with somebody at work all the way through to major conflict within a team. I would love to know what particularly, what type of disagreements and conflicts are you experiencing today in your own teams? And what part of the communication bridge do you think is particularly new for you, something different that you can try in your own interactions? I would absolutely love to know. So please feel free to reach out to me. You can find me via the links at the end and let me know what's kind of really resonated with you here today in this episode. If you have found today's episode particularly helpful and insightful, I would absolutely love it if you would share it with somebody else. That's a great way to share learning, and it's a really interesting way for me to make sure that I'm giving value to as many people as possible around the world, which is very much part of my mission with this podcast. If you're feeling particularly generous with your time today, I would absolutely love it if you would subscribe, rate and review, leave a review for this particular podcast. It does mean a lot to me personally and lets me know that I'm doing a good job. I'm fulfilling my mission with helping others around the world with their communication and connections all the way around the world. And finally, just as a quick reminder, after the podcast birthday, which was last week for this podcast, I have a special offer which is running at the moment. If you are somebody who is thinking about launching a podcast or has a dream to launch one, but feels quite overwhelmed by the idea of it and don't really know where to start, or perhaps you've made some progress but are getting quite stuck in the detail of launching, I decided as part of my podcast birthday celebrations to share my expertise. So if you would like to book a podcast kickstart session, I'm offering this for a really special price of £99 until mid-October. And it's your opportunity to tap into the insights around launching a podcast that I went through, what works, what hasn't worked, and equally ask your questions to help you along that journey so you can finally make your podcast a reality. If you'd like to book that, just contact me and we'll get you in for a session. So thank you so much for joining me here today for this episode, and I very much look forward to seeing you next time on Cultural Communication Confidence.